Just to start with very practical stuff, I think that besides like making sure the editors know of Renzo's last minute corrections, I think all that we're missing is Yasha doing that kind of, I mean, I can do it with you if you want.
Yeah, I'm starting to work on it now.
Yeah, basically it's just like always the same size of the file, right? The frame, and always position the thing on the same place in black with a gray background.
Yeah.
I think one thing I'm not sure how you're doing it, but if you want, I think, I'm not sure. Yeah, with screenshot, you cannot have a PNG file, but
I mean, I got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I should get it to them faster. I just need to sit down and do it. I just haven't had time last week.
No, sure. Just in case there was any technical
It won't take
problem.
too long. It won't take too long. Yeah, no, it shouldn't be a problem. It's just a matter of sitting down for like an hour.
No. Okay. Yeah, anyway, I think those are the only two things that are kind of pending, right? In terms of there is this open idea Rafael was talking about of trying to translate this into Portuguese. We could find a publisher, especially if it was already published elsewhere in English, might get someone's attention. So there could be a project for the future of translating this to Portuguese. And since there are many people who speak Portuguese, it's probably not going to be a big task. Everyone can translate just a bit. So there's that. What else? I mean, I think that everyone was agreeing that seems like we could use this as a kind of stepping stone to reorganize our next kind of sequence, right, of meetings and so on. So I'm not sure what you guys think about that. If you have any ideas.
I will say, I think we should definitely, I think, capitalize on like the interest we've both already received from others to like try to expand. So I mean, the video idea is pretty decent, but that would have to, we'd have to put quite a lot of thought into that. That's like a little more farther out thing if we did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the sort of, I like that project, but I think it's the sort of thing that doesn't really build on top of anything we're doing right now.
Yeah, that's
kind
true.
of
That's true.
New thing. I do like the idea that, from time to time, we could try to do something a bit more
like a wrap up.
Yeah, like a wrap up, and somebody writes down like 4 or 5 pages of text, which is already easily a 20-minute movie, And then we try to come up with what goes along with that. We have all the slides and stuff we can use, and then somebody reads it and we added something. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but probably is a better idea to imagine that as a thing we do from time to time than like a big project to invest all our time, because I don't think it necessarily takes advantage of the stuff that is going on right now, right? I mean, I have been personally, it seems to me that there are two things that are already happening that we could do something about them. The first is that, well, we did see that this approach that we took with this text does seem to facilitate bringing different researchers together better than what we were doing before. So probably there's something to continue in that way. I'm not sure how, but that's the first thing. And the second thing, which I think has to do also with people's interest in the project, which is not only will we probably have new interest once this is out, but we did get some people contacting us in the last couple of months interested in learning more about this, and we never really invited them, especially because it coincided with this invitation. Pretty much left everyone on hold, said like, well, let's arrange a meeting further down the road. But we got emails from the guys from Applied Category Theory. We sent a primer to a bunch of interesting guys from EndNotes who answered very enthusiastically about it. People
And
from,
knows.
yeah,
Ah, cool.
yeah, this Jasper Burns guy. And he's really like wanting to meet. So that's also something we could work on, which I think would be slightly different from what we're used to do. Like probably could be one way of starting that thing we said we wanted to do a while back, which was start inviting people to come more officially, right? So I think that's also something that is already kind of happening. We could just kind of take advantage of it. But I do like Dennis's idea of the videos. I just think that that's less of something we would be surfing something that is already happening and taking advantage of it. It would be something we'd have to kickstart from zero, you know?
Yeah, have we already talked about it? I just
No,
joined.
really quickly. Yeah, not much.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, watching these videos on YouTube that we could do a really good job of, like, I'm sure whatever we put out would have a lot of interesting and very much more accessible points than a normal, like, well, compared to what we normally do, which is just record us talking, it would be more accessible than that. But I also think it would be more accessible than a lot of like lefty content. So I don't know. I think we could do something really good, but yeah, it would be a lot of work. Like you said, we have no real experience besides maybe Gabriel here. So it would require some like learning on how that works. But I think the payoff there would be that we would get a larger crowd of people interested in the project.
Yeah, payoff is definitely accessibility, but it's a little more long-term of a thing to think. But I do agree, we've already reached out to a lot of people who've been interested. So just maybe like talking to them directly first and trying to find ways to present it. Maybe things we already have before we even start putting together videos to people who have already been interested, maybe like to targeted audiences, you know? That could be a way to at least start to even like think about. I mean, I guess the paper, the atlas is already like a step in presenting this to a broader audience, right? It's maybe the next step is right, directly engaging with people more.
Maybe also having like a page on the website with like a guide to like if someone wants to start, like maybe a map of like relevant presentation. I don't know if we have that already, but like maybe like a reading list by topic, like and like with some presentations and some readings that could help someone to get involved with the.
Yeah, I like
I think
that.
that's all help.
I really like that idea. So in general, before even this discussion, I was thinking we should redo the website, right? Or have maybe another page of the website that is updated more regularly. And maybe your idea, Renzo, is a good fit of maybe like a blog format where each one of us can post an entry and then we introduce some aspect and maybe like link the video, the associated video. I don't know the right format if that fits what you were saying, but I was thinking a blog because then we could split the work up and each one of us could write just like a one page or short description of an idea.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of something even simpler, just like getting like Karatani and then some like videos and basic resources and then Badiou and then like introductions to the approach, just more or less collecting to like a bibliography of the group. But I think it goes in line, I think, with what you're saying.
Yeah, because we did try that the wiki idea a while back, and I feel like it wasn't working because there's already information out there for various topics. I don't know, and so it seemed like a topic-based approach wasn't really working for us. But I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's just a matter of how we present it in like on a different type of layout.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something there, which I think is, I think we made this mistake before, and I think that there's something else we need to worry about, which is, first of all, there's a question of who, I mean, there are two reasons to address other people. One is to disseminate ideas. The other is to find more people interested in developing the ideas, right? I don't think those are the same like they're not the same strategies. Of course, both of them can exist together, but the weirder the project is, the more one thing doesn't do enough for the other, right? Like if it's a common sense thing that's well established, disseminating ideas and inviting people is kind of one thing does both functions. But I think that once you have many different areas mixed together, even if a person sees a short video saying that, you know, the compositional logic can help us through category theory to think about this and that in terms of commodity logic. Like usually either the person will understand what you mean by commodity logic or what you mean by topos, not both, right? And I think in those cases, and we face that issue, there are two problems. The problem of letting people know the partial results of what we're doing, and also having, let's say, available material for people to catch up if they want to join, right? I don't think those two things are the same. And I have the impression that everything we try to do in terms of helping people catch up has failed for now. Like we record meetings, but they're too long for people to watch. Only a few crazy people take the time to actually watch previous meetings, you know, because it's just too much. You need too much time. We had reading lists in the sense that we had a bibliography that everyone can access on Google Drive with like a bunch of text per folder. But it's also, I mean, when you don't know enough about a topic, it's hard even to start studying on your own, right? So it's not gonna do that by itself.
Yeah, this is why I think maybe the most immediate thing that's easy just to at least start thinking about audiences would be to try to specifically invite some of these people that have already shown interest, right?
Yeah.
And maybe do like a presentation of like the broad ideas, like maybe like 4 mathematicians or category theorists, right? Who already know something, and see how to join the rest to that. And then like one for maybe some of the more philosophically oriented people to try to get them on some of the more methodological things, you know, and then maybe the mix of those two will help at least orient how to frame things for different audiences.
Yeah, the reason why I'm saying this is also that because I think that this second part, like getting people up to speed, probably there's a component there that you can only do it by meeting and talking. You know, as you said, like having people over and talking it over, because nobody's gonna get up to speed with this crazy stuff on their own. Either they will partially know it already, or they will just feel like it's too much. You know, it's too easy to create like the fantasy that it's impossible to kind of learn enough about the other areas that are involved. So I think probably a useful strategy would be to say, okay, the website can only do like dissemination of previous results, not worry so much about helping people catch up, and then find a different strategy for that, you know, like try to create a culture where people are available to meet others in private separately to help with that. We can have videos that have that objective, but probably that aim is not the same as presenting it in a, you know, clear and concise way. So I don't know, like I just think we should keep those two things, like know that those two things don't necessarily match up, you know.
I wonder if trying to make people, if this is some sort of false problem, in the sense that catching up is impossible. And I think that, well, I can say this is what has worked with me trying to catch up, because I think at certain points I tried to catch up, and it ended up making things even harder, because it's like the more you see, the more there is to catch up, and the more people are involved, the more collectively it expands. So I don't think it's a good way of treating the problem. What I see that worked for me was the reverse of the situation, which was try to see what topics that it's on surface, it may seem to have some sort of affinity. And then the interested persons can probably try and present and do something. So instead of catching up, the people inside do the work of connecting. And then in a sense, the person who's outside may see, they may get more stimulated or something like that, to try and not catch up, but to seek out those connections that were already established in this presentation. I don't know how scalable this is for each person to do some presentation, but in a way it also adds a filter that relates to what Gabriel was saying, which is there's the difference between people who want to contribute and we want to expand so the project can expand, or people who just want to be bystanders and who just want to consume. So I think it might be something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good idea. Like personally, the time I presented IIT, like I wasn't sure yet if it had something to do with like the research of the group, but I felt there was like some affinities, and like the group had like taking the work of like making the relations actually made me sort of like understand better how do I fit, and like what sort of I think it's a good idea, like the person has the interest and sort of like we trust that what the person present has some affinity, because otherwise he wouldn't be interested, and then the group can help him sort of like connected to what's already going on. Maybe that's actually like I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, the only reason why I was mentioning this, the catching up, of course, I agree. Like it's not like it's something you can just solve, but it's just that I have the impression, and I think this manifests itself in the fact that there are only men in this group, is that there is a sort of, I mean, this sort of, I'll join and then I'll slowly find my place. I think it's easier if people are slightly confident in their, like if there is like a positive feedback in that sense. Whereas people, sorry, yeah?
No, yeah, but I think that's the problem with the catching up dynamic, because you have to be some sort of wizard of autodidacticism and stuff, because and I think it requires a certain confidence that it is manly or masculine or socially. So I think which is why I think maybe if you invert this relation, you skip the problem of the confidence, because there's no need for the person doesn't join. It's the other way around. It's like,
yeah.
I don't know if that's still.
No, but how is that what you're saying, not what we already did? Like there's space for you to present your research.
No, yes, but
I'm just thinking because, for example, one thing that happened is that I have a lot of private meetings with people who tend to be less confident about speaking here in this meeting. And usually there's an extra work of like talking to people, learning what they want. They are not going to say here because how can they know that it fits? It can be quite troublesome to feel like you're lagging behind. Catching up is not a matter of being fully updated in every knowledge. It's just that I fear a bit, that tyranny of structuralness, like lack of structure, where something gets reproduced if you don't put a structure in place to avoid it, in the sense that we can say, yes, it's open, everyone can just come in and do their thing, but yeah, the people who will feel comfortable to do their thing is actually pre-selected, you know, and you end up actually having to do something more affirmative on the other direction. And I think that usually what happens in that sense is kind of a lot of separate meetings and, you know, discussions that take place in the language of what the person is bringing and things like this that usually happen on the side. So that's the only, I just think that in the long term, we should probably slowly find a way to deal with that, you know, and I think that what we've been doing thus far works in part, like having the meetings, present on your own research, see if you can use whatever we're doing for your own benefit, and slowly this connects people. I think that's fine. But it might need some specific kind of additional thing, not to, you know, remain caught up in
Yeah, but I guess that's what maybe wasn't clear with what I said, and this is a question I have. How many meetings have been guided by people who were initially not people who were observing and then they proposed, they were the ones who were presented, but people who had never gone and then presented? Did that happen frequently?
no.
No, I don't think.
Because
No.
I think that was the kind of stuff I was thinking. It's not, I don't think it's the same, because I think it inverts the direction in the sense that it puts a different problem. It's not about seeing the person doesn't have to be confident or whatever, because in a sense she's being asked, so like, what do you have to say? Well, maybe this isn't something that's generalizable, because it would be directed at people who we might think that are already might have something in common. But I was wondering if that was something that was tried and failed, or if it hadn't happened yet. Just so
I think I don't know, from like, because I joined very recently, right? So like for me at least, like what worked was the fact that I had something, like it only got things rolling for me when I had something to do. Like, because before it was something like what am I supposed to say to like Reza's excellent presentation? Like, I don't know anything about Badiou to like be able to like make a good comment on that particular like very specific thing. Like, of course I was soaking in and like lurking on the stuff, but like I could only actually like interact in like at least for like from my side in a more like direct way as soon as I had something to do with it. So I really like Rafael's idea in that sense, because it puts like I think it sort of like puts it's a sort of a demanding it's a sort of a demand in a way. So like it can be framed as like a source of anxiety as well, like, okay, like show something of your research. But I think it's good because it's a demand that has a sort of a deadline. Like as soon as you like you get that over with, I think it's like the anxiety goes away a little bit. Like, because you localize yourself, and then as soon as you localize yourself, then it's fine. Like you can actually like you have the like, yeah, you're fine after you're able to actually like do something with that. Because before, I think if it's just like, if it's caught on the loop of like having people coming in and like you seeing the stuff, it goes like on that other direction of like, you start very lurkish unless it's something that you really know something about, and then finally, like when there's something to do, you can actually like begin. But I'm not sure if this is something that like would happen to everybody. For instance, like if everybody would have that thing of like, okay, I've been here for a little time, like people are offering something like that we do something together. Am I going to be a part of it or not? I think these things should be like clearly stated somewhere, not like I think Rafael's idea is good, of like every so often, like at some point, I don't know, once a month or once every 2 months, we have these types of meetings in which like people that have been lurking, like do something, like present their research, whatever, like throw it on the table, and then this could be like a particularly important meeting that people come and they like discuss and like discover something like from someone that is researching a related topic, and then you can actually like form that like that's comrade relationship with like research and stuff. I think it could be a good idea if we could formalize it in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think as
maybe
long as there's like like a minimum structure to it somehow, or if it's like completely unstructureless, then I think it still like goes by the same dynamics. But yeah,
I
Maybe
think
some-
structure-
I
Like-
think it has to have some structure. One thing I was thinking is because like a schedule, a public, and when Renzo was mentioning the website, I thought like a public schedule with like 3 or 4 dates ahead that maybe changed, but at least people can see that there's some things that are planned, and there's a certain direction. I don't know.
But I think your idea would be something like new members that sort of approaches. We try to encourage them to present like maybe a small thing of their work already. So we could, so for example, there like Christian who just like entered, and I mean even other people who like Rafael and other people who hadn't like presented, but then I got to read their text and then I was like, wow, there's like so much. So they could have already like presented something that would be already be super cool. So maybe having some mechanism which like new people are, there's like already a place for them to sort of present what they already have. Then we can maybe even like bulk, like if there are like too many members, like you can book like 4 presentations, small presentations in one meeting, and then have them like a day in which we just like listen to new members. And I think if there's already a space for that, people don't have to sort of like do the effort to feel it's the right moment to present for the first time. If there's already this sort of like mechanism to present stuff that they already have, and then we sort of like connect them into somewhere like.
Like that. Oh, yeah, like a
Yeah, that
scheduled
makes sense.
meeting for new people to present.
Yeah. And we could even make this because it's very interesting, because what people will present will also give us an image of what people think we are when they present. So it's going to be very people who don't have much contact with what's happening inside, and then so I think it might be another form of, and I think a day for it. And I like very much the idea of 3 or 4 presentations, kind of school vibes, but I like it. So
Yeah, doesn't this also apply to us though as well? Like, shouldn't we also be, because like sometimes we don't know what we're going to present next, right? We don't have something like that's going to take up a whole meeting. Maybe it's like something new that we're just starting to study, or it might become a bigger thing later on, but maybe we want to open it up to everyone. It's not only, but maybe priority goes to people who have never presented before.
I definitely like the idea of having more than one presentation that day, because I think it's a huge cause for stress to, do I have something to, because, the amount of time we get in one day, sometimes like 3 hours, when you see it's like presentations of 3 hours, 3 hours and a half, 4 hours of, I don't have, it's hard to feel that you have stuff that would, occupy 4 hours presentation or something like that. So I think it would help. And it's kind of an open mic, right? You just put a mic and who wants to talk? And you may use 20 minutes or half an hour. That's okay. I think I like the idea.
yeah, I also think when it's always that structure of like big presentations each time, it becomes this like perpetual progress that sometimes at a point can get forced, right? It like can go and go and go, and then it feels like you're stretching out things when maybe you need to be going back to what was before again, whatnot. But yeah.
about the presentation thing, I think that would be cool actually, especially because of the atlas. I think these things maybe start like naturally popping up of like places in which like texts converge, that it's not necessarily like not only like a reference to the text as such, but also like a convergence in terms of research. So like a particular topic that appears like as something to like take further, like from my perspective, for example, I got this like like especially reading the things on the logical value and this type of stuff. I really want to take a closer look to like financial markets and like closed markets and like this relationship between state like modes B and C and this type of stuff. Like it was something that popped up by reading like someone else's text. I think it was Dennis's and Gabriel's, if I'm not mistaken. Like these types of things start to appear and start to like, I think that can maybe guide future presentations even. So like we put this like to be something that like people talk about like outside and then they can present to the group at some point. I think it could be something for us to think about, because it's also like material for like future things that can like converge with whatever people are looking at like at the moment. I don't know.
Should we record these ideas just so don't forget them?
The meeting is being recorded anyway.
Okay, yeah. I might go through and write it down somewhere.
I do wonder also if we want to do like kind of, I guess, like more, maybe just like more targeted, like traditional presentations or whatever. Talks with people we invite to come. It might work to work on those collectively as well, right? And a lot of it could be like reusing parts, even almost directly from the Atlas, right? To represent certain things and present them for different audiences. I don't know what you guys think about that, but
So this would be like,
that could be something
when-
that's like relatively easy to do in like a short, when we could maybe get people to make it more like an event. Like, I don't know, I would imagine one for like mathematicians, and for maybe philosopher people, you know.
Like have scheduled days for like this day we're going to talk about our project. With
Yeah,
this
and just try to invite
in
people
mind.
from the different, you know, the different camps,
Uh-huh.
or maybe try to coordinate to see when
Yeah,
people are available.
But that's what I didn't understand. Do we put different camps together or like different presentations for
Well,
different camps?
I mean, to start with, I would say maybe separately do like,
Mhm.
like maybe some introduction to this whole crazy thing for someone that maybe already knows, that for like mathematicians specifically, maybe interested in some other things, or the other direction. I think that would be an easy way to start. We could do them relatively collectively and just kind of riff off each other. I don't know. Maybe that's too unstructured. I don't know.
I think if we have the Atlas, it's less unstructured, and
Yeah.
I do think there's something to I think this was something I was talking with Gabriel. It might, and he mentioned it might be interesting if present the Atlas to ourselves also, because we have the text all in one essay, but it may not be as transparent, and this might be something else that could maybe it's two things that could be done together, but
Yeah, honestly, that's a good idea too.
but I mean, are we really getting that many people that are wanting that? Maybe we should ask those who are interested.
Yeah, I think there are some people who are like kind of vaguely interested, but you know, from like different places that have expressed interest, but and like maybe have already seen the primer, already seen something or something else, you know.
the sense is that they are interested, but what's keeping them from or do you get a sense that there's something specific that's,
I mean, I don't know if it's people that necessarily would like join a meeting every week, but it's more they have seen this and expressed interest. So maybe if we
Mhm.
explicitly were like, would you like to come sometime? Maybe they would for like, even if it's like a shorter form thing,
Mhm.
but just to like talk about something one-on-one, especially people who have already, for example, seen the primer and seen, okay, this is seems like has some interesting ideas, but they're probably not going to read the whole thing and like really dig deep into it. Like it's quite a lot to give someone a 100-page thing and ask them to do that, read it when they're already, you know, working on their own research and all whatnot. So if you say you want to meet for an hour or two sometime, that would be easier.
Yeah, this is where that original thing comes up of like, we could try to cater to particular people and come up with like, this is what we think is going to suit your interests. And that's going to be like a whole meeting. Or we could try to make something that's like very low res, kind of applicable to everyone, or not everyone, but you know, more like accessible, like a video essay. That's like our calling card that we just put out there and then let people come to us. There's pros and cons to both. With the video essay, it's going to be hard to do. We're going to have to figure out what's the best way to present things. But the downside of like these super tailored things is like, it's very highly dependent on the person, and plus it only works once for that person, and then the next person that comes along will have to come up with a whole other presentation for that person, right?
but I think the idea of doing, instead of doing full-blown video essays, I think the idea for video recaps could be like something simpler, but also work as a low-res introduction. Like if we have like a group of meetings, like 4 or 5 that are at least scheduled with topics, etc., the person and someone can be assigned like this person will do the recap. And I don't think it has, maybe I'm too much of a too lazy, but and too a defender of mediocrity and laziness. So I think maybe if it's just do like a 20-minute recap of what happened, it might be enough without having to put bells and whistles in the video. It will be like shorter than the 10, 15 hours of the meetings that will be recapping. So like it might be enough instead of needing to do a video that's like really well thought. I think the idea of the video essay is excellent, but I think it's just too much work.
But what I was thinking now, what about doing like a video version of the atlas? Like we already have the script, like, so if we either agree like on a style or like a format, each one needs to sort of like present and summarize the sections he worked on and try to collapse it into like 5 minutes of like videos and talking, and then we can have 5 times how many contributions? Like it's already
18.
18 was 18. Yeah,
Yeah, I was like 18. So like if
So
each person speaks for 2 minutes, maybe.
it's like 90 minutes already. That's already like, I mean, it's not something that we have to, no. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that there's no need to make this extra effort to sort of like recap on something that like it would be something probably easier to do. Just like trying to do like a trailer, like a video teaser of the atlas, if you want to try this video for it.
Yeah, but I agree it's separate problems, right? One is disseminating, like getting people interested with the high level ideas, and then another one is getting what should we do for people who actually want to join every meeting, or like they're considering actually devoting time to the group. So maybe it's not the same solution for both. The videos for maybe outside audience that just wants to follow the research. And then maybe this welcoming presentation is for the person who wants to actually like work with us.
Yeah. I think there are like maybe four types of, like 3 types of meeting plus. So there are like the common meetings of presenting research or like reading some paper and like the most like common format we normally do. Then this proposal of doing this day of short meetings of people who haven't yet presented to sort of like help them sort of like locate themselves within the project. And then a third one would be inviting people who already have some like affinity, but it's more like people say like the mathematicians or like Nunes and this sort of, in which you have to sort of like invite, and it's something more, it's a bit different from people who is already sort of like inside, but still has to sort of like locate himself. And maybe the fourth thing would be this sort of like broad outreach, in which like these ideas of the videos and so you have like the research, then connecting people who are already into the research, and then talking to people who are outside, but like sort of inviting them to present something. And then this fourth type, which would be this sort of like broad outreach. Something like that.
I think this is a good summary of what the options are. I don't think they exclude the eventual private talks that might happen if people present and get interested, like people who are like connecting. First-time callers, I don't think it excludes talks with first-time callers, and also the third type of meeting, which Dennis has wrote, which invite people with special interests discussing possible connections. I don't think those types of meetings exclude other forms of aiding people, but maybe it might be possible to think how these private talks could be scheduled so they don't end up because I think there's a risk that they might be overburdening some people in the process, because some person might get responsible for doing more private talks. So if that in a way could be shared, like that could be some sort of not of linking the two types of forms of connecting people, like forms of connecting through the meetings and outside the meetings. Like if there was a sponsor, like every person who comes in, there's a sponsor, like, I don't know if that's a Big Brother type.
Yeah, I think that has to do with like the unavoidable thing of even unstructured groups always develop hierarchy, right? Yeah, I don't know how to specifically unwind that though.
We're kind of applying our own theory to ourselves about composition, interactivity, and intelligibility. So like we're composed in a certain way. We have certain meeting structures where, like Gabriel pointed out, we're all men. We have particular, like there's some limitations in how we are composed that determine how we're able to interact with the outside world, right? None of us are video essayists or have a YouTube presence, so it's going to be hard to get into that, to have that type of interaction with people. And yeah, so, and then intelligibility wise, we're not really it's always difficult to tell what people are getting from our videos, like where their interests lie, unless they tell us. So we have to make that intelligible. So I know like Christian was here the other time. We should ask him maybe what he's interested in. Maybe that's a good starting point.
I'll say it seems like a few of the new people, what Christian and Ephraim both are very like kind of computer sciencey. I mean, I'm sure I'd be very interested in hearing, just even if it's minimally connected, whatever their research interest, whatever. So we can even ask them specifically because they've already been, you know, coming a few times, having some input.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very curious, like a little bit on the topic of composition also, as Dennis was saying. I'm very curious to see how our text will be received, particularly like in the place that it is being published, right? Because I think it's a slightly different audience in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of like a very theory fiction vibes in there. Like there's a lot of like I think it's different from what we are used to. So some of these compositional things might be breached, I think, but still, of course, I think it has to do with a lot of like bringing in other people as well, and like trying to even like maybe like I don't know, maybe frame the way that we get people as something like not not necessarily how do you relate what you do with the group, with what the group has been already doing. I think that's important because it helps like the person localize themselves and so on, but also like what is the thing that maybe that you have been doing that like nobody is like directly doing, and like I think that could be a lot of like it could be a lot of traction over there, like, and it could be something very interesting. Like even I don't know, do we have someone that studies like gender, for example, like some of those things, like I don't know. I think there's a lot of room to like actually stuff that we do not cover, that it would be very interesting to like have people from the outside to actually like, and because it interests people, but they don't necessarily like see them. Like I'm talking about a very specific friend of mine about that, because I was like telling him about the meetings and he was like, what the fuck am I gonna do there? Like I study like gender, like there's nothing to do with neither like Badiou nor Karatani nor like any of these people. So I'm like, and I was like, oh no, I think it could be a good thing. Like, yeah, it would be really nice because actually like it has a very interesting like insight on like sexual politics and the whole deal, for instance. And like I think it could be like this type of thing also could work as an addition in a lot of ways, and like it could be something that we really try to add things and try to also breach topics that not necessarily like someone is familiar and presents, and maybe like try to sort out something that we don't know about and that is like missing from the group as a whole, and then maybe this becomes like an interesting topic for everybody to like at least incorporate that a little bit. I think that could work as well.
Like
Yeah, maybe part of the outreach could just be from this potential invitation from the study groups in psychoanalysis and politics. Just, you know, try to give like a presentation maybe in the same way, but in a more kind of generalized, basically, I guess, like maybe summarizing parts of the atlas and whatnot.
Yeah, there was
Not
something
that it has to be very different. It could just be like a collective presentation.
Yeah, there was something really cool that I think it was the study group for psychoanalysis, like that Karatani reading group that happened, and that they have the videos, and like in the end they did this really nice event with like a lot of perspectives on Karatani. So we had like I think Median presented something, then Mackenzie Ward presented something else, and like a lot of people actually, I think Daniel presented something, if I'm not mistaken, but like there was a lot of people actually like presenting stuff, and I think that format is something that we could do from time to time also. Like it could be something for us to think about, like maybe grab like maybe a specific thing that like we, because this is what I am like what I don't know exactly how to sort out, because there seems to be in a way like this sort of like what the things that interest like on the skeleton of the thing. So like sort of like where does the whole thing that like was built in the atlas and like diagram, like where does that go? Like what else do we have to like further go to develop that in particular? I know there are problems like in mathematics, and you know there are some other stuff that like needs to be like further worked on, but I'm not sure if like how do we relate that sort of like unitary thing, like that general thing, with like the particular stuff, like the particular stuff that people do that might have nothing to do with the architecture of the diagram at all, like directly with like the derivating and like the building of it, but have everything to do with like where it gets from. Like I think this is a sort of like sort of what I don't know for sure how we can, like how it can be translated into like an organization of how the meetings work.
Yeah, just to say something, I think that like all the ideas for now, I think they go on the side of giving a better structure to a regular functioning, so that, for example, we take better advantage of, you know, possible intersections between interests, that people have a chance to speak earlier and make those connections easier. But I think that, I mean, one of the curious things that we have right now is that we have two inverse models of work. We have the regular model, which is people doing their things, and slowly we find the intersections. It's the sheaving mode. And we have the conciliatory mode, which was the atlas. We had one common project. It doesn't matter if you already had an intersection or not. We build that local object such a way that it would glue people's different kind of approaches, right? And I think it's quite interesting to see what happened with the group. A lot of people who were either more absent or not presenting suddenly were very much finding a place. But on the other hand, people who just joined didn't really find a way to contribute. So Efren or Chris more recently. But so it's interesting that this coming up with this concrete one thing we were doing mobilized people that were already in the group, but perhaps it wasn't that easy to move from like, okay, there is some shared ground with these other guys' research, but it doesn't make up for a common kind of frame, right? And then that project seems to kind of unblock that issue a bit. On the other hand, it seems like for people who are just arriving, the mechanisms you guys mentioned actually functions better. Like there is no one common project that it's gonna mobilize people who just arrived and have absolutely no bearing on what's going on. But I think that we could divide our strategies for building the group from now on two fronts, right? There are things that I think this sort of ideas you guys mentioned might not solve. Like, for example, the thing Rafael was talking about, his friend is working on with issues of gender. I think that from the outside, they won't see how putting it into this tapestry of interests, how this would build into, you know, a connection. Whereas perhaps if we have a project and we make the conscious decision of leaving an empty place for these questions, it's easier to bring somebody in, you know, and say, okay, there is room here. So we might have, it might be good to imagine more recurrent sort of project-based activities, you know, because I think that they mobilize a different type of person in a different type of situation. Like people who from the outside don't see where they fit, even like minimally. With the project, it's easier to purposely construct a place, right? So if we're doing like an atlas based only on case studies, it's much easier for somebody who's just, you know, an activist in a political movement to find a place, because we're gonna hear them talk, perhaps ask specific questions, there's a project where that's gonna fit. Whereas if they're just looking at our website, they're not gonna they're gonna say, I don't see any connection. Like, they're not even gonna submit to the process of finding connections, you know? So perhaps we can consider this as like two extremes, you know? Have a more concrete kind of discussion about other basic projects like the Atlas as a resource to like prove to people that there is place for stuff that we didn't discuss, right? And have the meetings on the other side as is more kind of fine-tuned, calibrated structure that facilitates people connecting with each other once they minimally have a place, right? Because I think that what was slightly clear to me is that the meeting system, it tends to be something like, let's stitch up fragmented ideas and slowly build up a common global framework. The Atlas was not that. It said like, I know you're coming from a different global framework, but let's stitch that other thing in just this one thing, this one project, let's stitch it together with someone else's work, right? So I think we should navigate between the two, probably. Just to say that I think that we probably should consider like other stuff like the Atlas. I don't think it falls under outreach, you know? Like, I think that the main function of it is not going to be being readable by others. I think the main function is that it's actually a different strategy, just like the meetings, you know? It has an internal function.
Yeah, it does. Although I will say that the Atlas was prompted by an outside group, right? It was prompted by a journal asking us to write for them. So I don't know if, I'm not saying we cannot cause that in ourselves, but in this case, it was like we were writing for an audience. You know, and a lot of our discussion was about how do we make it clear to this. We like looked up previous essays and, you know, tried to get a feel for what the journal was asking from us. So
Yeah, but
having that in mind is important. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. But that would mean, for example, looking for publishing opportunities, right?
Right. Yeah.
I do wonder what the readership of the journal is too. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll find out. I'm just to suggest that probably the Atlas shouldn't go totally on this outreach popularization front. You know, even the video. I mean, I do think it fits there, but I think that one of its functions is not exhausted by that, right? Of course, it's directed to other people. Worrying about how others will see it should be very important, but it is also a fact that focusing on something more concrete like that produced a different dynamic inside our meetings, right? So in my opinion is that this is actually more profound break or an example rather than a one-off thing. We should probably find a way to exploit this a bit better, you know?
I wonder if there's a possibility of, because I think doing an Atlas every time we need to stick people, glue new members and such, I think it's like that meme, which is like, men will literally build an Atlas of politics rather than going to therapy. But I was thinking if it was possible, maybe we could think smaller objects that are publishable or whatever is the. I agree that it doesn't have just an outreach function, but maybe something that isn't that doesn't have to mobilize the whole group all the time. I think it's very interesting, and I think the object that mobilizes the group is something that should be other forms of it should be experimented. And I also think that different forms, different publics will make new stuff appear. But I was also wondering if trying to think the Atlas not only as, I think thinking of it not only as an outreach tool, but also as a tool that we can modify so we don't have to literally repeat the Atlas, but something that could be more mobile. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I didn't mean like always the same thing.
Yeah, no, I don't
Though
think
I
you
do
were.
need therapy, sure. But I think that, for example, the idea for the course that Daniel Tutt offered us to do fits the same thing. I mean, the Atlas wasn't
Yeah.
even something to mobilize the whole group anyway, right? Supposedly there are more people here than there were in
Yeah,
that
no,
thing
no.
already.
I was just saying, I don't think there has to be 12 people.
No, of course.
That was just what I was saying. I think maybe smaller objects can also do that, do that same function, not putting weight on more and more people at the same time.
Also, how do you think, like, because we talked about trying resurrecting the Tech Talk project next year, it would be nice to think, like, I'd be down to do that. So, but in which ways, like, I think it could also be used to sort of like a smaller object that can mobilize some people in the group, and then like I imagine, like maybe Christian, like once he present something like he has worked on, we'll be able, it would be nice to sort of like talk to him about it, and then maybe some small project can come out, can sort of like develop and tie in some way to this group. So I was just thinking how we could take advantage of this sort of like side projects also.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd be interested to talk to Chris and Efren about it, because I think they're quite a lot better developers than I am. So in terms of the technical side, they can take the lead. I can,
Efren
help
is
out as
also,
needed. But
he's also
Yeah.
like a programmer.
yeah, well,
Cool.
he works in data science also, but
So maybe we can
I think he's a
try
postdoc in the School of Information at Michigan, I believe.
on these ideas of the short meetings. We could try organizing with like Efren and Christian, and then maybe some of us like talking about Tech Talk, one meeting on all this and how trying to tie this, and then maybe another meeting for the other people like who hasn't presented also.
That's
Sorry,
more on
what-
like the. Wait,
What is Tech Talk? Sorry.
this is an old idea that hung around and was never really went anywhere, but I think Renzo's still been thinking about it, especially.
This is a very catchy name too, so.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
a catchy name.
I think it started with on like the circle. Like, I mean, I got the idea from the I think mean, Gabriel and Dennis will be able to talk about, but they had this idea of doing like this in the site, like a sort of like interactive thing in which you could sort of like see the cells and the subsets all together and have an idea of what is alive and what is going on, like a representation of the organization of the. And so I did a presentation on sort of developing what a platform for this kind of like visualizations of organization could look like. And we try to apply like many of these ideas of composition and perspective onto like a platform that people could actually use, and try to like sort of like at some point also like build all of the three modes, like the ways in which the logic of group formation, some sort of like protocols for decisions, and some sort of like financial structure also was like this big, also ambitious thing that But yeah, it got resurrected once and then it faded out again.
Yeah, I think the basic idea was like a maybe like a decentralized, I guess, like organizational structure for putting constraints on groups. Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think it's
Like,
I think it's still pretty amorphous though.
it's very amorphous. Yeah, it's somewhere between like I envision it somewhere between like the decentralized autonomous organization, like what you see now in happening in blockchain, but somewhere between that and like something more politically motivated, like the dual power app that the BSA has been working on.
Mhm.
Wait, what have they been working on? You said
Yeah, I
political
was gonna
power
ask
app?
you, what
I've
is the
never heard of
dual
this.
power app?
Yeah, it's a way to connect cooperatives together and facilitate direct democracy within
Hmm.
different organizations. So like from what I understand, it's like a voting tool plus ways of sharing information. There's more details in this website. Yeah. It's also really nice because their entire roadmap is open to the public. So you kind of see usually that's not revealed to people.
The structure of the roadmap is something that has always like actually interested me, because I think it's an interesting way, like roadmaps in general, like they're interesting ways to build like accountability and also like to become I think sort of to see the pieces in planning stuff, and it could be something that like could even help us in a way, because what I like, at least from what we spoke about, like there's a lot of things that need, I think, first to be discussed with the rest of the people, of course, like to be passed upon them and like this type of stuff, but also that other people could help in terms of like format that those things could take place. So like maybe it should like I think we could get a lot of the things that we are discussing now to actually like try to work with the most people possible at the same time, and like see how we can compile those things for like the next year, sort of like because one of the problems that you guys were talking about was the thing with like the sort of like the way that the pace of the meetings was defined sort of like in this very short span of time, in which like you have like 1 week, and then you have like a presentation, then you have like this all this cluster of things that should happen, and then they start happening like as soon as people become like aware and like, they become they can actually do them, like, and then things start going on. But I think it could be a good, like, I don't know, it should be something that you think about, like how do we not plan the next year, but like organize the next year in a way, like how do we know that like those things, like those meetings can actually like happen? How do we divide the labor of like actually making the meetings, like making the presentations, like how does that look? And I think that this is something that we have to think with like a lot of the rest of the people and stuff, but I think we got some good ideas so far with like how to structure that. I don't know, maybe a STS roadmap, something like not specifically this form of one, but something like that that can actually like keep a sort of like a flow of the commitments visible, like for people outside also, and like for people inside.
Yeah, I think that speaks to like translating what we have right now into more of a project-based group where everything has like particular steps that we can see in the future. And right now, so far, I feel like the group has been, basically every meeting we're like, does anyone want to present next time? Okay, then that happens. It's very spontaneous, right? It has not been until we did the atlas, it has not really been like a project-based group.
Yeah, I think you don't need to choose between the two, but I don't know. I have the impression, I mean, my suggestion is based on the diagnosis that we're publishing the first, let's say, properly collective text that we wrote, like the one we wrote for Crisis and Critique. We put it together quite extrinsically, most of it, right? Like we said, can you just write a couple of paragraphs about what we, like summarizing meetings, and we added, right? This is the first thing, that things are much more interconnected. The amount of connection between the parts is uncomparable, I think. And so that's the first thing. I think this marks a moment. And the second thing is that it has the possibility of not only the possibility, because we didn't promote that other text at all. I think it was shared once and that was it. I have the impression that this is not the case with this thing. Like there are at least 12 people who I think will be interested in promoting what they were doing, right? So there's a good chance that we're presenting ourselves differently, and also that something different happened. And I think that even if it's not something we should consider like a structural thing, it's probably a good idea to imagine at least the next 6 months, the next year, as something that should take advantage of that situation, you know? Either like, we don't need to know what we're gonna do, but perhaps have the means to answer to possible criticisms and show that we're interested in addressing these things. And there's space, you know, turning that into, yeah, there's space for these other things to be included. Preparing the meetings, as I think you guys did, with a bunch of really good suggestions, for the possibility that there will be more people involved and with different levels of kind of connection with what we've been doing already, right? So I just think it should be probably like less of a structural discussion and more of a strategic one, considering like the next year. You know, like where we want to be at the end of the year. For example, I like the idea of making partial results more accessible, like you suggested, with essays, video essays and things like this. But I have the impression that probably imagining like a long-term project that could, like, from time to time take up some meetings, you know, not like this marathon we did in a month, but something that has similar arch, but it's slow, you know, but that brings people. It could be like a tech talk thing, something like that, but like one single thing that has this function. Doesn't need to be constant, doesn't need to take up too much time, but I don't know, I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I agree that I think diversification and going back over things, right? Because I think we've had quite a productive time of like producing new ideas and growing quite a lot quite quickly with the amount of material. So especially clarifying for audiences, going back over and doing this kind of like mixed approach this next year, maybe, rather than like the same throughout every week or whatever. But maybe we need to decide on a specific structure, right, to help that along. I don't know though.
Yeah, no.
I think I like the idea of having some sort of goal in sight that doesn't have to be done like very quickly and everybody losing sleep. And I think it can even help with people who are lost and what to do, how to participate. I think it in a sense, it allows for both the blooming from the people who are already inside and from people who might be like not so sure how they can fit in, I think. So I like this. idea.
So candidates for that would be something like the bestiary thing, or maybe Tech Talk, or
Yeah. I have the impression that Tech Talk can easily, like quickly become something quite technical and hard to integrate many people. Like probably should, I have the impression probably should be considered like a case inside of this thing rather than a large, I don't know, like a large common project. It might actually slow it down in a way that it actually takes the, makes it harder to remain motivated, you know? I don't know how to, if it could take that role. I don't know.
You mean that?
Sorry, yeah?
Sorry. You mean that like the Tech Talk thing is something that is, it's very like, it might be something to be applied to the group, but it might be developed and like put forward by like a smaller amount of people that would actually.
Yeah, I don't know. I have the impression that it's harder to develop it in these Monday meetings. Like I can see it easily becoming something that requires meetings, happening separately. You know, once you need to assign tasks, it's something that either you have a technical knowledge or you don't. Like, I think you can have a big integration with what we're doing on Monday, but probably like if you take that to be like an overarching project for the year, if you want that kind of conciliatory kind of function, it might be a bit more exclusive than, for example, another thing which I think is a good candidate, which would be, okay, let's now very slowly, because I think there are way too many questions, like preliminary questions, but like very slowly start thinking about, you know, a compilation of some sort of inquiries or case studies, because we don't even know what the case study is really from the perspective of what we're doing. I think there's like a bunch of questions, right? It would kind of require a lot of partial results to be consolidated because we need to apply them. So a lot of the stuff we already did needs to be revised. It would require inviting a lot of new people because it's by definition something directed, you know, like constituted by dealing with people who are outside of the group. Like I think it has more of a vocation of being a slow thing that cannot take, it doesn't need to take every meeting. As Rafael said, it doesn't even need to involve everyone if they don't want, but it's easier to integrate it to the meetings from time to time. And I think it's easier to make it open to whoever wants to participate as well. And it is a kind of a project-based thing, right? Well,
Yeah, that's I think that also having the time to do something like not only having, but like, because it also requires that time in a way to do like the case study type of thing would be a great thing. And I think it could be sort of like another side project, but I think it's one that people can maybe get into easier than the technical part of the Tech Talk, for instance. Like I think it could be something like very ongoing, because it could like begin with something like, okay, what does it mean to do a case study of like on our framework? And it could like, I don't know, begin with I was speaking about this with Renzo like very briefly, that like I was because like we were Renzo was making a reference like to the autonomists, and like the autonomists had also like a sort of like ethnographical tradition, right, with like the factory diaries and this type of stuff, and like Pati's factory sociology and this type of stuff. So it would be something like sort of inventing a form of what a case study could look like, because for them it looked like the factory inquiry, for us it might look like something else. And like another, and I think that would be like the question to begin with, sort of like the sociological one, and then like to unroll into like the specific cases, how do we access them, and like the particularities of each of them. I think that would be like something very interesting for us.
And I think it might actually help with Tech Talk as well. Like I I probably think of this as a project that requires like a very serious methodological discussion, which we haven't really done. Like, as you said, Rafael, like what is a case study from this perspective? Because if we're committed to the idea that we're not describing sociologically reality, okay, where does actual descriptions of things fit into this, right? So on the one hand, there's a methodological discussion, then there is, I think, like it commits us to invite people from time to time, right? And they don't even need to prepare that much, and we don't need to prepare, we just need to slowly shape up the sort of questions we want to ask, the sort of information we want to, right, get from them. And probably that we can include a bunch of questions that concern tech talk into this, because we also need to ask questions of different political organizations to kind of actually give shape to that idea.
Yeah, I feel it opens, because this idea of going, having like this long-term thing on developing case studies, like I feel the Atlas sort of like, now we have like this sort of common big monster that serves like, it's a big thing, like its scale is made to like describe social formations and big stuff. So it's already something that have a lot, like are now able to sort of like localize a lot of stuff inside that big thing. But I feel like the case studies is a different like concept, like
I totally
path
agree.
we haven't explored yet, which is trying to see how like stuff appear from very situated and concrete sort of like processes, how these categories like the triad of intelligibility and composition, how does it appear like in concrete situations, but also like there's like the Karatani like 3 modes could appear like more like in a smaller scale in the end, right? So it would also help like both trying to simply like apply the monster into like cases, but also trying to find this methodology of how this in the end, like this small organization, this process, this synthesis can sort of like how does our approach appears from this point of view.
Yeah,
and I think there's a lot of like conceptual work that we can still do.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, I don't think that anything like this would substitute anything that we were talking about anyway, but it might be like a plastic tool we can use, for example, to facilitate some things. For example, it's hard to just by, going with the flow, make clear that some spaces are open for certain interlocutions. Whereas if we're doing case studies and we're purposely inviting people from, feminist autonomous groups, like that issue becomes a non-issue because we are the ones who naming that there's an empty room for that needs to be filled, right? So if you couple that with the idea of restructuring the meetings, having revisions, the possibility that people come in through case study presentations, and decide to stick around because there is a machinery to accommodate their interests and things like this, like one thing can actually help the other, right? I don't know, even I wouldn't even say that I wouldn't even commit to having something written down by the end of the year. Like I would be happy if by the end of the year, we knew what we mean by
year, right?
Just what it means to do a case study in this context. Like, I don't even think we would need to like have a big book about it, but that would be like a massive movement forward. I totally agree with you, Renzo. For example, if there is one thing that is like a small hole that if you poke it, it opens like a huge universe in the Atlas, is that we describe things from such a, like we only describe the category of these objects. We don't describe almost any object in this logic. So like institutions, companies, no proper groups of people. Like these things don't really, it's easy to say that they are inside of the monster, but like actually building, local vistas of all of these things, it's not accounted for. We never try to do it, and I'm not sure how we would, right? So there's the methodological issue, there's the advancement of the theory. I think it would be something that remains open to others. Like it would be easier to bring others into the meetings. And using the Atlas, I think it's easier because we can show something like, this is what we've been up to. We're moving to this other thing now. You want to come over, And it doesn't, I think it could fit what Rafael was saying, that it doesn't require everyone to engage. It just means that from time to time, there will be like a meeting that has more of a format of an interview, like a political presentation, and that people, like from time to time, will also be presenting when they want to present something that is more methodological on this direction, I guess.
Yeah, but I think in a sense, I think we can divide what I was saying from what you've said into two different things that I think are still aligned. They can still have some sort of relation, which is, in one sense, I was thinking, well, I don't think we have to do an atlas so we can form some connections and actually bring people into the fold. I think there are ways we can do this, like in the year, which don't necessarily, we don't have necessarily to write a book in the end, which is like, this is the atlas of case studies and we all need to go to therapy and such. I think like we can have some during the year, because of this goal that is set in some sort of higher level. We can have a direction, which is, there's this problem, there are these issues that we need to learn how to deal with, and in a sense, it gives us a certain direction that as you've said, it brings people in with a purpose, with a structure, which might be more worthwhile than people just coming into the meeting and, look, this is what I have to contribute, and then we have to like go around them. I think in this way it's better. Like we have one thing that we want, and then people have something that they can offer, but that we don't know what they want. I think it's better. But I also think that in a sense, people should, like everybody, I think, should participate in this major goal, which is like we decide collectively what it is, but we can also have partial results that don't have to be done through everybody. And I think that's what I had in mind. But I think it's very, because I do agree with you all. I think it's like, well, at least for me, because in a sense, I get the sense that for some people, the frontier between math and social sciences is some sort of holy grail of frontiers. And I think in my case, my frontier might be closer to my holy grail frontier might be closer to the one that relates to the case studies, because I do think, in a sense, and I like the ethnographic mention, because even though anthropology is a social science with all its problems and hangups, I think the ethnographic discourse is one hell of an invention, in that they solve a specific problem that they posed, and they solved it collectively and whatever. But I think there's a problem that's of not a similar type of problems, because we have different things in mind. We are not imperialists, for starters. But I think in a sense, there's a problem, which is the translation between frameworks and experience or practice. And I think that really is something, because it was something that I was thinking a lot while I was doing the case study that I did, because in a sense, I I think it tried to put the Karatani modes into play, into one very specific and small experience. And in a way, I think the result was very enlightening for this organization that I'm part of. And this was something that really, I was like, fuck, these are all the problems that we have to deal with. So the diagrams, they have this power that really gave me ideas on how to work back what I had to do. So I think this is a very good direction to head, I think. And it might interest other people that are outside that have no sense in how they could fit. I think I'm disagreeing with y'all. I'm sorry. I just ramble on too much.
But honestly, it was your text that really convinced me that, I mean, I think Renzo's text is really, really good, and I really like Michael's presentation, but both of those are a bit more distant, like Michael's very much. Renzo is also like organizing this thing, but I think it's like a zoomed out discussion of the careers track. And the thing you wrote is like, it could be circulating inside the institute.
Yeah, I even want to in some moment, but
yeah. So I think that there is something to this that really suggests that this could be like have a promising kind of arch if we kind of have it as a side project that everyone's from time to time, because I mean, ultimately my point is this: I think that it's better for the next year, at least as something to test, if we have 2 plates to offer people when they ask what the group is about. One thing is like what we had thus far is like, yeah, there is this overarching framework with all these things. So you go for the global dish, like this big picture description. The other thing would be good to have like a local dish, like, yeah, we're working on case studies for this thing. And if the person likes that, well, if you like the case studies, come for the case study, stays for the massive framework, right? So it would be good to have those 2 answers. Ultimately, that's all that I'm trying to propose. Like, I just wouldn't want us to revert totally to the idea that, okay, this is gonna be something public, the Atlas, so let's prepare the meeting structure to accommodate possibly new people. I think that we should stick to having something that substitutes the Atlas, even if it's in a very long-term kind of goal, just so that we can still offer those 2 answers, like simultaneously. And then we, of course, how we dose the 2 things, like mix them together, how much time we devote to one thing over the other. I think it's something to probably test, right? Our enthusiasm. Like, I have the impression that if we start inviting people we don't know, and the framework that we're developing actually helps us ask better questions and listen to them in a different way, I think this is gonna be a huge turn on. Like, people gonna be really excited that this real world stuff is really exciting. So it might easily become something that directs more meetings than planned. But either way, I think it would be good to have the 2 extremes to kind of work with. And I mean, that would also, if we're planning to redo the website, that probably would be a good thing to have there, right? Like project that we're working on, and then you have that thing separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like
it's
this
good.
idea.
I think it's good to think about both.
Mm-hmm. Both, yeah. And I think the website will tie them together in a way.
Yeah. But just to say, I really like the idea of doing the video essays anyway. Like, it's something I really wanted to do, something in that direction for a long time. I think that Renzo is right. Like, perhaps as a test, like we could choose a section from like 2 sections perhaps from the, or 1 from the atlas, just to turn it into a short script and see if it works, how we would actually do it, you know. I think we can come up with a work protocol that is not too stressful for one person. Like, I know Renzo, he does really good editing, so we can share work on that. Other people can easily do it. Like, if we have like a 5-page text we all agree on, like 3 to 5-page text we all agree on, and somebody records it, doesn't even need to be one of us, right? And somebody records it. I actually, to be honest with you guys, I probably would do something with like less pages, like 3 pages, because you don't want it to have like continuous talking over the thing all the time, right? But if we do
You probably
that,
don't want to go too long either.
yeah,
I
exactly.
think it's probably
So-
okay, like if we try to keep small thing, like 5 to 10 minutes maybe at first. You know,
Yeah,
it's-
so I have the impression that
easier
if
to
we do
digest.
that and like we then have one meeting where we're just brainstorming images, ways of exemplifying things that would go along with it. People then, like during the meeting or afterwards, they just compile a bunch of videos and photos and stuff. Like you just throw that audio into a timeline and you have the pre-selected material already. The editing, like having a rough cut, doesn't take that long, and it's actually quite fun. We could try, like, test if it works, you know.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is the saying less, right? Like we're so used to just
Yeah.
turning a small essay into the atlas. We have to do the reverse operation of like saying the minimal amount.
And the visual / technical component.
Yeah,
can probably
for
get a little
example,
bit
I
of
was
help from my
thinking,
girlfriend as well, who's also has
Ah,
some
really?
video editing.
that's really cool. But for example, let's take
If
Yasha's.
she has the time to help me out, teach me some stuff maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if we had money,
But,
I would
Yeah, if we can.
hire my wife. I wouldn't ask her to do this voluntarily because she already does too much. But she's like a movie editor, so she's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
very crazy, so she could definitely do this. But I mean, for example,
Yeah,
let's
but
take
we can
Yasha.
split it up also, yeah.
Yeah, but like imagine that we do it with like the introduction, like just take it in order. Like I can't even start to imagine what would be like a visual way to
It'd be
talk
very
about,
difficult.
you know, objective phenomenology, seeing, slicing. And, I tried to do that with Luisa. We did like a short movie. It wasn't easy, man. Like we did it actually quite quick, but
How long did you take to find to not find the images, but to know what you wanted? That's what I was going to ask.
we actually did it in 2 days, but Luisa is like a editing monster, so she finds amazing images in like 10 seconds.
That's hard talent to replicate.
No, it's hard to replicate, but she also, one thing that I learned from the video is that I should have written something much shorter, and I should probably have trusted like visual expression more than just the text, you know. But I mean, I don't think that nobody knows the form of those things. Like usually video essays, like Adam Curtis, they have this problem, which is usually the idea is the inverse. You present enigmatic images, and then the writing alleviates the enigma usually with a conspiracy, right? So you show like Gorbachev, and then you show Nixon, and then the person creates what's the connection? And then you say the connection is that they met, blah, 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 right? It's hard to do the inverse, where you say something like, yeah, category theory on objective phenomenology, and then you actually show something that alleviates the suffering from what you just said.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, in terms of the like video essay idea, it's probably easier to start with something like a case study, or even like the Karatani nature one. I think would be might work.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I would actually go either with section 1 or 2 if we want to try like an example.
You think
Because
so?
yeah, I mean,
Okay,
it's no
yeah.
point of creating a
Just intro,
video
general intro.
that they won't understand the method. Like we don't even introduce the.
But that you got your problem right there. We don't need to introduce the method. Maybe that's what the images will do.
Mm-hmm.
If the thing is to not have the text being the thing that explains the images, then well, maybe I think that's the real challenge. Because if you do one on the method, yes, of course, there's how will this be represented? But I think the other thing is maybe a more, there are two different challenges, and maybe the idea of doing two videos, the two parts can be chosen with that in mind. One video that has no method, that is explicit, but then the task is, well, I'm not going to be the one that edits because I'm not an editor, so I'm just like.
I don't think the
You do-
editing is the problem there. Like,
The problem is choosing the images.
yeah, I don't
No
think,
one-
honestly, there, I would take it
Yeah,
out of question that there is a visual didacticism that explains these ideas. Like, there's no way we're not gonna have to do the bulk of the work by speaking. I mean,
Yes, but I don't know. I think, yes, of course. I think the speaking will have to do the work, but I think it's a different challenge when the speaking doesn't have the method that's like being thrown at you.
no,
Because
yeah,
there is a method in every text. So in a sense, I think that would, but I don't know. That's just.
no, my point was
This is-
simply, yeah, I was just thinking like an example of the problem. The reason why I didn't think it was a good idea to start with case studies, that usually the reason why you're presenting different logics and things like this,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and if we're trying to do this to make it, the ideas more popular, probably we should start with something that makes the basic ideas more popular before anything. But the problem is the same. Like, probably we'll need to have like either like some very rudimentary animation of something, you know, like some arrows will have to star.
Yeah, definitely arrows will be a star. Yeah.
Exactly.
But wait, I didn't understand earlier when you said, so you have Adam Curtis uses like a conspiracy basically to connect images. I'm thinking we could kind of do the same thing, because aren't we basically saying, like, if you look around all these different things that normally don't make sense, and maybe normally we consider them to be kind of, I don't know, the sign of like individual corruption or greed or whatever, that these phenomena can be explained by this other way of seeing things. So like, couldn't we also splice together a bunch of like Gorbachev and Nixon and like a capitalist company, like could show these things that people associate with like doing bad things, and then we can say, oh, we have a way of explaining this. So we can leverage the conspiracy angle, right?
I think we can, but like if yeah, okay, but I think a person who watches like a short 10-minute thing we did that, you know, says, look at this picture of what does money have to do with shamans in the Bororo tribe? And then we show an image that, you know, we say, yeah, both are objects with universal properties in different topo structures.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the conspiracy we're proposing. You know, like, I like what you're saying, but I think that to make sure that it's our conspiracy and not just a conspiracy, that sort of thing is going to be an issue. I mean, I think it's possible to do it. I'm just trying to say that it's going to be a very complicated mix of writing things succinctly, but still keeping, you know, things that are kind of relevant to the project and making it very visual, which is not very easy. Like,
somewhere where like maybe like the conspiracy can come in is like, because I think we talk about this motif a lot about how, I guess, like we maybe like think about organizational structure like as it already appears, right? In the like not, I guess it's almost in nature, right? As if
Mhm.
we are like whatever observers of an ecology of humans, kind of, right? Like the possible organizational structures we want to describe like should already exist. It's not like we're modeling some utopian possible thing that has no level of existence yet, right?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I mean,
So maybe that, yeah, I'm saying maybe that could be a place to start with that in terms of thinking about like images and connections. I don't know though.
yeah, I mean, I think all the ideas we should try. But just like if we want to try a first sample just to see if it works, I think Rafael is saying he thinks a better idea would be to start with like a case study that is just the methodology is implicit in the presentation rather than like the topic.
I don't even know if it's a case study. I just think that maybe something where the methodology could be implicit, but it doesn't have to be a case study from what I was saying. But I just don't
Or at
think
least something that has a more like directly applicable and interesting, like maybe like
yeah, I think
political
seeing
consequence or
nature.
something.
I think seeing nature
Yeah.
would be a good example.
I do
but-
think the nature one could be a place to start.
but I
Not that
get
it has to be like word for word, but
Yeah,
it might
yeah,
have
yeah.
to be a reworking a bit and maybe weaving some things, obviously cutting some things out too.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to
It's an idea that
3 pages to present, you know.
yeah,
So
I think
kind of-
3 pages.
I kind of lean with Gabriel on this. I'm more wanting to introduce the methodology as a way to spread the ideas, but I'm sorry if I missed this earlier in the conversation, but what if we approached it as almost more like the YouTube educational channels where we start with a question like, what is a social world? And then answer it, not polemically, like we're trying to prove a case against other Marxists or whatever, but just simply like taking our methodology for granted and then teaching it, and then using diagrams the way, I mean, I think a lot of the different channels use images very creatively to teach pretty abstract concepts. So I don't know, that might have already been the general idea, but that's kind of how I've been
Yeah,
thinking about this.
I like that as long as it's like, I think if it starts too maybe like too abstract or too methodological, not that like we don't have any of that, it might be a bit alienating, but
Yeah, but I
or
think
like
the
you might
there's been a
question
lot
already
of-
is, I
There's an
think the question
explosion
is-
of so-called like left YouTube that does get into a lot of abstraction, and they start from theoretical questions, but the way a lot of them tend to do is they do use the quote, I guess, the conspiratorial setup where they'll kind of take a
Mhm.
lot of like dispersed phenomena and then ask what links them all. And we can certainly use those
Yeah.
kind of like techniques to draw a picture. And I think we could come up with 3 very concise examples as a group, like what best represents in today's politics mode A, mode B, and mode C, and some interesting combinations, and then ask kind of didactically, like what connects these, and then show them like it can be, I think, kind of simplified down a bit in a way, because the overall, like it is so complex that if we, from our perspective, oversimplify it, that might make it actually accessible as a thing.
Yeah, I mean, just not to create like open like this big rabbit hole thing. It's just I think for now, if we just have like a sample, it's probably not. There's a big chance that it's gonna become a product we don't want to upload to YouTube. Like we're just gonna try it out. Like in that scenario, we probably should use as the basis something we already wrote and not really write something new. Even though it's short, I think that like writing a concise 3-page script on any topic, it's not going to be that easy, you know? So possibly it's easy as a sample, it's easier to take something we have, I don't know.
But
yeah, I mean, take something we have, but I mean, pare it down.
But no, it needs to
Make
be
it more for,
Yeah,
it's not that you would take the
I
thing.
tend
and
to
form
disagree
straight.
on that. I mean, I haven't done a lot of
audio visual stuff, but from like the writing style tends to be so different, and it tends to be pretty clunky in the
Yeah, no, that's really true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I agree, and like, I'm honest, like, I'm not ready to stand up and be like, I'll write 3 pages. So I don't want to put that on anyone else either. But just like from my experience, they don't translate well, and we want to write this like it's already abstract, so we want our style to be accessible, I think.
It is definitely requires, I think, writing a little bit more non-linearly, because like you like want to tie things in from the beginning that like you're gonna talk about at the end, I think more so than when you read an essay. At least I get the
Well,
I
part of
get
it is like
that.
a viewer, like
Yeah.
readers get to choose their like temporality when they read, if you read slow or
Yeah.
fast or whatever. But like when you speak, you're setting the temporality for the viewer, and that I think has to be built into the writing from the beginning. Otherwise, it can be,
Yes.
you know.
I think maybe that's because I think I like something that John said, that at least it reminded me of like every dialogue from Plato, which is like, what is virtue X? And then the end, it's all math. All the answers are like, oh, this is math. So,
Yes.
and I think in a way, like, what are social worlds? And then like, okay, it's all these things that we were talking on the number one, on the first chapter. And then what I was thinking is like, instead of like trying to deal with how are we going to make the language accessible, I think maybe the question is how to frame a problem that might get people connected to what's going to be explained, in a sense that in the end they can arrive at the end point without them needing to feel like, oh my God, this is hard. I learned it. I think it's there's this, if you can put the proper question, which can link what someone who doesn't know what the theory is, but so it can guide them. I think that's like the main thing that needs to be in the script. How to frame one chapter so it can be presented. And well, in that sense, I think the first chapter could be a good one if we could, because I think my fear is like, okay, what are we gonna do? We're gonna just like put it up and like, of course we would reduce it, but how would it start? It can't start like, there are these objects or whatever. I think there has to be some sort of proper framing that we can't have what we do in the atlas, because in the atlas there's space for you to develop the question and get a sense of it, and people can see the content page and whatever.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is that probably this is not something you can just like select a sample and do and try it out. Like probably somebody will need to think about this quite hard, come up with invent a way of introducing in a narrative problems, and then like it's actually a separate thing. We can't just extract, like take a shortcut from the things we already did, right?
Yeah,
it does
like,
interest me a lot. I think that it's definitely a doable project, probably as a slow thing. But yeah, from what you're saying, I think that it makes sense to like, as John said as well, like these scripts are not gonna be extracted from anywhere. Like they need to be built as scripts in different kind of approach. And
but I do think they're doable. We just have to see what is our timeline, and I think when we frame the problem, the script will be done. I think there's a proper order of doing this that might help.
Do we have a specific idea of who the videos would be for? Like, are they for activists we want to teach these theories to? Are they to theorists that we want to get more political? Is it for anyone? Or like, I'm kind of curious, and if that came up earlier, or if we're still trying to figure that out. Or
I think that's an excellent question, and it should be directed not only at the videos but at everything we're saying, because I don't think we specified that much. Who's the outreach to?
Yeah, I would say probably not just to like whatever the like theoreticians or the academy or whatever, like that's essentially the paper, right? We've already done. But I would assume more broad, but
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think the case study orientation goes in the direction that it's activist. So I think that can be a temporary public, but I think it's a large one enough, and
Yeah.
one that also admits many languages.
Yeah, I tend to. I really don't think we should. I think it's a kind of a trap to try to be very accessible, because in like a general sense, because I think that I have the impression that the big kind of barrier we'll have to cross if we do take this idea of a sort of atlas-like long-term project based on case studies, discussions with other people, interviews. I think the next barrier is actually the barrier of making this interesting to activists, right? I mean, I think it's probably better to have that as a focus than to split the focus into many directions. Like, there is always the mystique of things that are not directed at you. So probably some people will get interested, like a larger public, because of that. So I think that, like, let's say, since if we do approve, like, collectively, this idea of the next cycle has this overarching common project of inviting people, doing case studies, discussing methodology of what is, let's say, a political ethnography on the one hand, like what is our version of militant inquiries, and on the other hand, like, I think a bunch of discussions that were relegated to a second kind of to the background the last year would come to the foreground, like relation to cognition, relation to navigation, relation to like local languages of politics. Like, these things would all be theoretical problems that are also more central, right? So all of this kind of already gives a theoretical and a kind of practical addressee, which I think is like bringing it closer to the activists. So I'd probably try to make these videos like stress that same direction rather than like worry about being as like totally understandable. It still require a very serious kind of didactic effort, but I think it's a different one, right?
So would it be fair to say that, like, a lot of, maybe one of our big challenges right now is motivating other folks to go through the kind of work to understand enough of the parts to then apply this? Like, not necessarily learn category theory or linear logic or whatever, but to understand enough of the abstraction to then put it to work in their work?
Yeah, I think that I would phrase it in that way. I think that, like, the way that we describe this sort of double, like these two options, right? We can, if somebody asks what we're doing, we can say, look, there is this common theoretical thing. You can get interest into different aspects of it. We're trying to stitch everyone's interest together. That's like one way, which requires you being interested theoretically. But there's this other side, which is like a local concrete project. You don't need to be interested in the framework, but it's probably going to be easier to participate if you do, right? So there is a kind of communication between these two sides.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what we're talking about right now is a sort of added thing to that, right? It's a sort of really good test, which is the more we talk to people, the more we kind of manage to chew these complicated concepts, the easier it should be to give like a distillate of this, like a sedimented, concentrated version of it that is useful, right? In this video form. Probably is not, I think that in that sense, it's easier to differentiate it from the Adam Curtis kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
right? In the sense, the thing that I don't like about Adam Curtis is just that, like, the way that I would distinguish what we're doing from this sort of overarching explanation is that I find him very ideological in the sense that he localizes where you are inside of this huge mass in such a way that usually the best thing is not to do anything, right? Is to despair of how deep the conspiracy goes, kind of thing. Whereas I have the impression that it would be good for people to feel like, you know, have you seen John Berger's Ways of Seeing, this documentary about learning how to look at art? And it's like, you have it on YouTube, and he's just trying to teach you how to look at paintings, pretty much. And like showing you that it's not really like an intuitive thing, but it's also absolutely kind of democratic. He is against the sort of elitism of artistic theory, but he also says, look, you need to pay attention. This is not just, you know, seeing is not the same as looking. I think that that's a good model, kind of. You know, he really wants you to learn something. Like, he doesn't want you to buy his picture of things.
I like that. I think that's a good image.
And John Berger, yeah, we don't have, I mean, nobody would look so cool and like 70s like him, but
I think that's a really good framework, and that clarifies a lot. I'm wondering, so if we were to approach like answering a question or something, would it make sense to jump right into the logics and modes, or do we want to talk about composition, intelligibility, and interactivity, or do we bring them in at the same time? Because those seem to me like the two. If I were like to go back to myself 10 years ago when I first started organizing, and I think of the concepts that would be most useful to me right now, those two triads to me seem the most obvious.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that that's something to, I don't know, like, what is the best idea to start with? I tend to think that just the intuition that how things are composed has some bearing on what things can do is a really powerful idea that comes with a problem of, you might look at things differently if you think about this, right? So I tend to agree with you, John, that it does make sense.
During that section of the intro, maybe just that section, right? But trying to kind of like explicate it more with connections, examples, ideas, things that like situate each part of the triad and help think of it concretely, right? Not like just like theoretical.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I think
for example, the intro is very like methodological.
I think Dennis did a really good job in his presentation, and when he did that separate lecture thing, where he used a lot of like nice images. He made a lot of analogies with like biological things and social things. Like, I think it's a good kind of,
yeah, we can combine them.
Yeah, like it's a good kind of
two parts.
But again, I think that this is probably like, there's a good workflow for if we do want to try something like that soon, which I think is, somebody needs to try their hand at a three-page long presentation. Doesn't matter where they take the material from. As John was saying, probably it needs, as Rafa was saying, like probably needs to be something thought as from the ground up, right? It's not going to be just a collage of things that are already written. Then we can have a meeting, kind of trying to think of examples together, kind of doing a quick brainstorm and searching for material. With those two things, it doesn't take that much to have the video then, you know, like usually for video essays, which are based on archive material, the big task is the archive selection. Like, that's really complicated, you know, like good scripts and archive research. If you have those two things, it's easier. Like editing it's actually quite fun, and it's not really the worst part.
That's what I was thinking about using, just to make it easier on ourselves, maybe to use like film or TV as the thing where like I don't know, the motto or the motif of what we're talking about, right? Because like if we're talking about specific, I mean, it's also possible we can talk about specific social movements and maybe find clips of related to those things. But like film is already in the format of something you can glue together in a video essay. So that it's so easy to do those, like not easy, but they're so popular, right?
The one thing also, archive research, I think could be done relatively like communally. It's not something like
exactly.
writing a script is more
Somebody needs to
difficult
do the
have
first
everyone. It's like, yeah, someone generally does the first draft and people can edit over it, whatnot. But especially if that takes a long time, like we could have, once something is set, once we have some ideas, then find connections and have whatever, some more people go through it and pick things out. Test out how it works. That might work as a system.
Yeah, I wouldn't like commit to only using movie clips, because I mean, only if you consider like I think we should just use archival stuff, like generally speaking. Like if you just look at YouTube videos, you'll find like a lot of cool biology documentaries and historical things. I mean, why not use those things as well? I think.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
So
that's
I mean,
a lot of good examples there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. I do think that we'll need to like meet up once we have a draft of the script and have like a brainstorming session on good examples and things like this. You know, there's no way around it. I think it should be like example based or as visual as possible and things like this. So probably that's where everyone can pitch in a lot. But I don't know, like, I'm not sure if anyone will volunteer to try like doing a sample draft, something like this. But
what exactly is that?
Trying.
Can we put into a question right now? What exactly? We were to put into a question.
I feel
an itch to wanted to do it. I'm still not quite clear on where, and I'd like to help out.
Yeah, I mean, I have the impression that if this is just a sample, we're just gonna see if it works. I think whatever people wanna try their hand at, we can do it. Of course, I think that we had good ideas of just, approaches. Try to start from a problem or a question, things like this. I think that's good, but the actual content, I think we shouldn't really like determine it beforehand right now, because we don't know who wants to do it and what's the shortest path for somebody to try that right now.
I was thinking, I was just going over the atlas. I wouldn't mind trying to draft something from the communist standpoint one. I think it might be something that might be, it's a small text already. And I think there's enough, there are ways that we could frame it that would present the project, but also present the project with some meat in it. I don't know, I might give it a hand like after my vacation, but I wouldn't mind. I think it might be fun.
Yeah, I think everyone should try it. Like if you feel like you can just try it, let's see what appears, and then
yeah, and I think we can have multiple essays, multiple drafts. Like if people are doing it, and if people want to do the same, they can also work together.
Yeah,
I think we just have to limit the draft writing for like small groups, because if you try to do a draft with like 10 people, then it's like 2 or 3 people want to work together. I think it also works.
Did we say like 5 to 10 minutes? Is that kind of the time frame?
Yeah, I think we should probably just think in terms of like pages. I think it shouldn't be longer than 3 or 4 pages.
3 or 4 pages.
Even if the videos end up being, even if the videos are longer than that, Like,
Mhm.
for example, you want to have a clip of a speech. So it's like material that will have no narration on top of it, right? So that doesn't mean we know the length of the video. It just means we know.
Yeah, just wait,
Okay.
just for scale, when you did your the one in Portuguese with the scale and the Minecraft and the stuff, how long was that script? Because that was like 20 minutes or so, 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, that
Somewhere in that
was
range.
it was
I think
20
it was
minutes.
4 pages. It was 4 or 4.5, I
I think
think.
it was 4.5. Yeah,
Single space or double space?
single space.
Or, okay, good to know. So we can,
Yeah,
if we do like half of that or so.
Yeah, I
right,
think 2.5.
2.5. We'll see.
So
I've never written anything like that, so I might try, but I can't commit it's gonna be good. So I'll commit once I try something first, if it works.
yeah, I
no,
think I've got an idea
it was
about-
much longer, guys. It was like 8 pages, 7 to 8.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, it was
So we
7
can
pages.
probably 3 or 4. Okay.
Okay, because I'd like
Wow.
to try something that does answer the what is a social world, but I've got a question because a lot of how I've thought about it is like how a social world breaks up, and in particular, my experiences here in the States. And so I'm wondering when we're answering these questions, when we're talking about localization, like, do we want to be giving examples from around the world, or should I focus on the examples that I mostly think about?
I think you should just do as you want, man. Like, I don't think we're in condition right now to come up with like a overarching plan for style and things like this.
Okay.
I think like to have a sample or a couple of samples, people should just do what they think works.
Okay.
That's the shortest path to having a simple text, simple script. And then we can fine tune it as we go along, but just so we don't,
Cool. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
yeah, we
Okay.
might even find
With
out that what works is very, very kind of surprising. It's not what we imagined, like that's not.
Yeah, with the social world idea, John, you're thinking about, you could frame it as a argument against that famous Thatcher quote in terms of slicing up worlds, something like that. I don't know.
Which quote? I'm not sure if
Oh, the one that there's like I forget the exact wording. There's no society, there's just people and families. And that's like
Oh,
right, that only
Thatcher.
sees the individual and like the
yeah,
very
actually
limited
that's a really
communal.
good, yeah, that's an interest. Yeah.
It's
Okay,
quite
cool.
famous. People talk about it a lot. It could be a place to start, like a question or something.
No, totally. All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I forget the exact wording, but something like that.
And we can end with we live in many societies.
We live in many
We live in a
societies, yeah,
society.
exactly.
We live in.
We live in at least 3 societies. Maybe more, but at least 3.
Yeah, it's like Spinoza. There are infinite attributes in God, but I'm only gonna name 2 of them. So
Yeah.
if you want more, like, it's up to you. Prove them.
Mhm.
Okay, guys, just to make sure because there were a bunch of ideas. So the things that I think I see here, Enzo.
Yeah, he did a summary.
Yeah, so let me just see. So the idea is to add short meetings for people who haven't presented. Try to have a long-term strategy with like a concrete project. And currently the idea that we're toying with is imagine this sort of bestiary rather than the atlas, which would be based on case studies with all that entails. So the next year, we would have to do like theoretical work, not just having people over, but theoretical work to learn what we mean by that, by case studies, and also start inviting people under the specific, with a specific aim of preparing this, but it would be mixed, weaved together with the other ideas, right? So the short meetings, inviting people with special interests, probably discussions of these outreach video things, right? And I guess regular presentations, which are not the short meetings for people who haven't presented, right? And 5, I think that there was talk of redoing the website in some level. Is there anything?
It's like a plan for a year. This is 2022.
Oh, yeah, and we're starting
And Tech Talk,
on
yeah.
some likes.
Yeah.
Which I think
Also
that this
the-
idea of case studies also kind of fits into it as well.
Regarding the time, is
Yeah. I wonder if,
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to switch to like a weekend morning, maybe. I don't know. If that's difficult for any of you.
no, I could do it, but not sure how easy that is for others.
Or at least like
Morning?
or earlier, I don't know.
Yeah, but what I think
Maybe not morning, but like maybe more midday, earlier in the day for because Renzo's in Italy now, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just asking. Morning from what point of view?
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, I meant from approximately our time zones, which is like, you guys are like I think only 2 hours off from us.
2 hours. And Renzo
Normally
is
it's 1,
5
but we
hours
have daylight
ahead.
savings time, which is
I think I'm
messes things
4
up.
right now.
Yeah,
I think there-
4, sorry.
There might be periods in the year that we're 5 apart, I think.
Yeah, it's quite weird. The countries don't agree with time zone.
Is Monday fine? If it's earlier?
Yeah, I
or-
could do, I mean, Monday is a good day for me to meet earlier if you guys prefer, but I'm not sure if that's,
Monday earlier might just be difficult if/when I get a job.
it will happen.
We'll see. One day.
But like, if it also
But for
starts
now.
1 or 2 hours before, is already not bad to me. Like if
2 hours before.
we normally start.
I could
So
go
that would
earlier on Monday.
be 8 over there, right?
Oh, wait. So do we normally meet at 7? So if we started at 5, it would be like 9. It's not bad.
And that would be for the people who are in the later time zones.
Yeah, I wonder for Dennis and Yasha in the States, I think starting 2
3?
hours earlier, it's hard, right, Dennis?
Yeah, it's like what, like three or 4.
3.
Yeah. so
Yeah.
that's- I mean, right
Yes.
now I can, but that's not eternal. Probably.
Yeah, unless I have a meeting, I can.
Capitalism calls.
Yeah, sometimes my boss will ask me to join a meeting.
Yeah, but we can be quite flexible. If we want to do a weekend, I mean, it doesn't have to be in the morning on our time, but that would be more flexible. I'm usually, chilling on Sundays. If I do anything crazy, that's on Saturday, at least for me.
I know Caron has I think Caron and Rafael have already commitments on the weekend, right?
Ah, okay.
I generally
On the
work on the
weekend, no,
weekends too.
not really. That stuff will stop like next week. That's
Okay.
Yeah, but on Sundays I will have a course during January to give, so this will be a problem. Monday is not good to start early because I now teach from 2 to 5 on Mondays here, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. 5 p.m. I could do it, but yeah, I will be tired from just ending a class, but it's okay. I can manage that. Earlier than that, it would have to be way earlier, like before 2 o'clock. So I don't think this is feasible for other people in the US. So.
Yeah.
I mean, even 6 is not too bad because then it's 10 and we're trying to stick to 2 hours, then ends at midnight. It's not.
For me, 6 is way better. I don't really like meeting like at 7 or 8. I'm really almost always tired already from a busy day. So maybe 6 is not too bad.
That's still
Not
too early
bad.
for you, yeah, Dennis.
No, I can do that. So that's
1 hour earlier.
1 hour
1 hour
earlier than usual.
Yeah. So it's like 4 my time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the time
Well,
zone.
because our daylight
5
savings
hours.
switched recently, so
So 3 my time.
we were starting at 6 and then it was 5. So it would have already been around 4. That was the time, right?
I think I could still make it.
It would be
Okay.
the time we started today, right?
yeah, it would be the same thing as we did today. So, which is like 1 hour earlier than the regular time.
Yeah. Today's on the earlier side, so. I mean, for now I can do it, but
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
think we need to, yeah, we probably just try something out. If it doesn't work, we can try something else.
My
The
most
second
free
best-
day is Tuesday though. Tuesday is pretty free. So if anybody wants to change days, Tuesday is very good for me.
Tuesdays I have classes from 7, so 7
Yeah,
to
so it's,
9.
yeah, it's the opposite for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah, but it's, I
we
only
could
have,
have
I
like
think, 2 months. I only have a couple of months left on my seminar, so I can change the date later, but
Yeah, I'm also pretty flexible. I can just reschedule patients. Like if we find a time that works for everyone, I can work around it. Like just reschedule the patient another time. So
yeah, I have a commitment until March, I think, with Tuesdays, but after that, I can put my classes on another day.
I've
That
got
we
Mondays
consider,
off
yeah.
from, oh, sorry.
No, just asking whether like changing days mean like we're sticking to probably 6 is the only time that works for everyone, or is it morning also viable?
I think we had to ask Dennis, Yash, and John because I think their morning it's gonna be pretty early for them, probably.
Yeah, I think I'm the earliest right now at Pacific time.
oh, you're in
Gone
oh,
from-
you're on that
We've
side.
gone
Oh,
from
wow.
Turkish
We
time
have
to
people
Pacific time.
literally all
So I'm
around
that
the world, yeah.
asshole. I'm sorry.
What time is it?
Yeah,
How
I'm
what is
okay
it?
with weekend.
It's 4 p.m.
Midday
right
weekend.
now.
shit.
Yeah.
It's like
So I mean,
5
like
hours
1
difference.
hour back is fine. That's easy. It's 2 my starting time. But if we get started in the morning, you know, I can get out of bed. It'll be early.
We just now need
John,
some-
what about weekend morning for you?
Weekend mornings are
Like a
fine.
Sunday
So I
morning
work,
or something.
noon normally. Sometimes I get scheduled 11, but probably if it's
Oh, okay.
but also I've got Mondays off from work right now for this group, so I could probably get it pushed around. It'd be nice if we change it, then sticks to something, because then it's just easier to schedule at work and all that fun stuff.
I'm not really a fan of weekends because I'm generally dead on Saturdays and Sundays, but if it's what works for most people, but it's generally the day I lay dying. So
But right now, who cannot do it? Like the simplest idea, meeting 1 hour earlier. Is there anyone who cannot do it?
I can for now.
Yeah, I mean for now, like not as a fixed
For
thing
now.
or
for the next couple of months.
yeah, like
Yeah.
just for now, so we can plan something. Yeah, this way, I mean, we at least know when to meet, like the next couple of meetings. I think that's enough of a solution.
I think maybe we can revisit the problem in the end of January, like if there's issues.
Does someone knows, because of summertime, this winter clocks, like I remember at some point it becomes 5 hours difference, but I don't know if it's 5 hours, if it helps in some sense. Probably it doesn't, because it's just more.
I should see if it works. Yes.
Yeah, there's no way it helps, right? Yeah. But I don't know when it starts or if it's a thing. But we can, when it arrives, we can just.
Isn't it close to when the US does the time shift thingy? Is it like it's
Wait,
all
what?
this? I can't believe time zones are uncoordinated. This is like so. How do airplanes work? fuck this shit.
Yeah, I don't know. In the US though, we just shift an hour twice a year, back and forth.
Yeah, we used to do that, but
Yeah,
our president.
I think most of the world doesn't do that anymore.
No, just like most of the world's on metric, but gringos be
Yeah.
like, nah.
Yeah.
12 inches in a foot, but 3 feet in a yard. Thank you very much.
Get that fucking shit. Come on.
That's like witchcraft.
People are so confused why we have Trump, but then you just look at that shit and it's like, no, that's not shocking.
Yeah, the date format. I hate the date format. That's like,
That makes no sense.
I think in Japan it's backwards. That's what my wife was saying. It's like year, month, and then they.
Well, they write the other way.
Yeah, but I think even so, you read it backwards.
Oh yeah. Oh okay.
Yeah. I think it's, well, that's what she said at least.
Hmm.
So sticking Monday 1 hour earlier.
Yeah, let's try that at least for the next couple of
Okay.
meetings. And so from all of the, I mean, I think somebody should just post, like, share those ideas, those proposals in the WhatsApp group so other people can see and we can talk about it with more people, right? And then see, okay, what needs to concretely get done. From the proposal, it seems like it should probably mean that some people would be invited to present something, right? Like that's kind of the next step, if that moves forward, right? Anyway, just to kind of get an idea of what's the concrete next.
Yeah, I was thinking if the case study things, if the case studies thing is a thing, shouldn't we have like, because we talked about a lot of things today, and wouldn't it be nice to have a meeting where people, or what would this goal be? Or would that be too much of a, like, plans, actual plans, not.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this is definitely not I don't think it's a obvious thing at all. Like, there are so many issues, like theoretical problems, and people can, it's the same thing as with the Atlas. Like, it's possible to slice this problem in many different ways. So, yeah, I can see a bunch of issues being brought up.
Yeah, because I was thinking even for planning the next meetings, like knowing what the ideas we have in regards to case studies could be like what we do for the meetings that start going in that direction. Like who to talk to, what kind of presentations. Are we going to go over the case studies from the Atlas, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have something I wanted to present already for a while. I think it's just a good opportunity, like this whole discussion on the history of militant inquiries, militant, how do you call this, like interview structures and things like this. So I don't know, like, I think there are theoretical stuff for people to present. There is this practical discussion of who to invite. I mean, there's before that even the discussion if this is a general enough overarching project, or if it should be a bit more general than that to accommodate other interests, you know. So yeah, I think it's a good guideline for. It seems to me like we have two big guidelines for the next meetings, right? If these ideas are approved, then having people over doing short presentations, scheduling at some point discussions about this bigger project, if it makes sense, how it should be changed, how it should be approached. I think those are already like concrete stuff to do in the next meeting, right?
Cool. Yeah. So I guess we'll just coordinate with this stuff, share, ask maybe Christian, Efren, if maybe they'd be interested in doing something on just like their general research interests. I think short day for that, or other people if there's other ideas in general. And then the deciding maybe people to invite, that could be like a concrete thing to at least think about for next week to, I mean, not decide for sure, but
Mhm.
have something more concrete.
Sure, that sounds good. We can continue talking about it through WhatsApp anyway, right?
Cool, cool.
I mean, I think that other people need to be involved anyway and see if this all makes sense.
Okay, are we good with just maybe just posting this little thing that Renzo wrote up of the proposals?
Yeah, I think just
Finding out-
giving a bit of context and posting it. is
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Great, guys.
Cool, okay.
So 1 hour
Okay.
earlier next week, right?
Nice seeing you all.
Yeah, let's do that.
See y'all next week.
Okay,
Yeah.
see y'all.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.